you don't open the door, you'll smash the glass. You'll smash the glass.
Hiya folks, so it's Gavin here from Sovereign Empowerment, and today I've got a chap here called Stuart. We won't be passing on his last name, and Stuart used to be an enforcement agent. Stuart used to work for a firm of enforcement agents, that specifically specialised in repossession of vehicles. So any type of vehicle on any type of finance contract, Stuart would be one of the guys that would attend the property to repossess that vehicle. And Stuart no longer does that. In 2019, Stuart stopped doing that. And the reason we wanted to do this, and Stuart wanted to share his story, was he wanted to give a little bit of insight into how these firms work. Now, I will stress again, this is a specific type of agency that specialised in vehicle repossession, but there's a lot of correlation to maybe the usual types of enforcement agents that we're all commonly dealing with. And what we're going to do is just kind of go through a few of those, give you some insight into that. But the other part of this is finishing with Stuart's top tips, really, on how to avoid your vehicle getting repossessed. And actually there's some really simple ideas here, suggestions here. So this doesn't require study of, and I say this loosely, the law or anything like that. It's just really simple things you can do that prevent them doing what they're there to try and do. Okay, so Stuart, welcome. Thanks for giving your time, first of all.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So you worked for 4 years, I believe, for one of these firms. And in 2019, you decided to quit, because there was quite a few things going on at the time, and it's like one of them was like the final nail in the coffin, as it were, for that career. So do you want to give a bit of a high level as to what the typical day to day would have been, and what started happening for you that got you questioning things? Because in fact, let me just elaborate a little bit. I just want to share this for the folks. Stuart's just told me that when they go through their training, there's nothing really from the point of view from what's legal, what is the law and how does this stuff apply? It's more about show your ID, but it's more about the internal rules that they're following that govern how many repossessions they get and then how much they get paid for doing so. So just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, Stuart, could you just talk us through what kind of was going on?
Yeah, I'm going to say, obviously, I was doing that job for 4 years. Initially started off, just wanted to do something different. Because it was all self-employed basis, that sort of thing attracted to me, which I believe is pretty much standard through the industry. A lot of them are self-employed. There was targets to be met every month, where you had to repossess a certain amount of cars, but that was also the company targets, but also personal targets, where if you met those personal targets, you get a slightly higher pay for the next month. But if you had a worse month, then you drop back down another tier, and there was little incentives all the way along there. And for me, the job started off reasonably interesting. I spent 10 months down in London first, which was a baptism of fire, to say the least. But then where I live now, I eventually got given my postcode area, and that's how it's divvied out. It's divvied out between the agents and postcode areas. So you all got a targeted area, where mine would be East Midlands area, and you go around, you get your list of addresses, and day by day you just work your way through those cases. Setting off at 3-4 o'clock in the morning is not an easy job, because you'd have to obviously self-motivate to get up every single day to do that, and then get yourself primed and ready to intercept the customers and their vehicles, which was always at the best time, early in the morning before most people went to work. That's what we got taught, hence the very early starts in the morning. Then after a couple of years of that, it started getting a little bit tiresome. There was more, you could see what's happening today, but you could see it's starting to appear, the financial hardship a good few years ago. I said this was 3 years ago since I finished the job. So we're talking about 5 years ago when I started seeing people like sort of starting to really struggle financially. And even though it was just a job for me, it was starting to have a mental impact on me, because I wasn't just dealing with people who just wanted to hand their business card back or stuff like that. It was literally their only means of transport to get to work, the only way to get the kids to school, get the shopping, all that, hospital appointments, all that sort of stuff. And that was becoming more and more and more common, obviously building up to what it is like today. And that, for me, it was starting to hit a little bit harder, that people were really struggling. And eventually, when it came down to it, on like sort of almost my 4-year point, that's when I was like, I've had enough. I couldn't do it to myself anymore, watching people struggle. And by the end, I was actually trying to help them more than I was actually helping myself. I spent the last probably 3-4 months of my job on the lowest pay tier because I wasn't hitting my targets. But that wasn't through lack of trying, it was more through trying to help people get around it a little bit, or just trying to help them out a little bit.
Because you've got a conscience, right? You've got a situation where you're an enforcement agent incentivized by the number of repossessions you can do. Yeah. I'm assuming that's quite a competitive environment as well. Would you have you'd be competing with the other enforcement agents, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of time, like sort of through those 4 years, where it went tier 3, tier 2, tier 1, and tier 1 was like the top band. I think in those 4 years, I probably only hit tier 1 about half a dozen times. Because, again, certain areas of the country are more lucrative for agents than other areas. My area, not so much. But when I was down in London, big city, yeah, of course, it's going to be a little bit more lucrative. So, those targets were always in the back of the agents' minds. And, that's what drove a lot of people, including me at the start. I was like, I can make a lot of decent money, and I did.
It makes sense as well, because when you're in the good times, and as you say, you're not dealing with a situation where you're impacting people's lives. You're dealing with like the company car kind of thing, where that's getting, it's not that big a deal, right? There's no one being impacted. But then what you're saying is that started to change, and then it was more and more about you going to get that individual, the single mum's car from the driveway. It's going to massively blow up her entire life if that was that situation, or whatever it may be, and that's where your conscience starts kicking in. So just making the assumption here, I can imagine in a situation where you've got heavily targeted performance type criteria to go and do what you've got to do, and then that's evolving into a new world where people are really getting into hardship and you're turning up. So I would assume you weren't the only one that kind of left the profession at that point. I say profession loosely, because we know it's changing now. And no disrespect to what you're doing before, but what I'm trying to say is that I'm guessing a lot of the people that now continue to do it, and I'm not badgering everyone the same, but there's got to be some scenario where their conscience is not coming into play. They've become a little bit desensitized with what they're doing.
Yeah,
there's a lot about the character,
Yeah, there's a few agents. I haven't stayed in contact with any of them, but a few months after, I was speaking to a couple of them, and I know a couple of them were feeling the same way. But it's like anything else. Jobs were hard to come by. Got to put food on the table. For a lot of them were family men.
But mate, you were too, and you still walked.
And I still, it's one of those sort of, I had to make that decision for the good of my own mental health and all that side of things. Everybody's got to make their own decision at the end of the day. I know some of them are decent guys. I know some of them aren't. I think it's the same pretty much for any sort of profession. But I do know some of them definitely felt the same way that I did. I also know that industry took a hit when the pandemic first hit as well. So I don't know how that worked out afterwards.
That makes sense. So talk about the situation then. For you, was the final nail in the coffin for your career, as it were, that made you decide to get out of it?
It was dealing with a customer up north. I believe the case was one of these logbook loan companies. So for anybody that doesn't know these sort of companies, you'd have your own car. You've bought that like sort of outright, so it's not a financed car as such. But you go to one of these payday loan companies, but they were known as logbook loans. You take in the logbook, they'd value your car, they'd give you the money of what they would value your car at, and keep the logbook as class of ownership and also the spare key.
Oh, okay.
If you fall behind, and the interest rates are ridiculous.
Ridiculous, yeah.
They're absolutely mental on them. And if you fall behind on them, then obviously they send me or somebody else out for that car. Now, this car, it was on the roadside. It was primed and ready for me to just go and clamp and take, basically. But I spoke to the customer firsthand. She begged and pleaded that I don't take the car because she needed it for a hospital appointment. I said, okay, well, first and foremost, I'm just going to need to see some proof of this hospital appointment, which she did. I took that as absolutely fine because it was, from what I remember, albeit a few years ago, it was a serious thing that she needed to go into hospital for this appointment for. And I got my knuckles wrapped massively because I didn't take the car. I got my knuckles wrapped massively because I didn't take the car. And for me, that was about, I'd say probably about 3 or 4 months before I left the company, but that was kind of like
You were going in that direction anyway, weren't you? Yeah. So this was like another thing where you just think like the humanity of the situation is not even considered. It's hit your targets. Or else kind of thing, which is terrible, because you can imagine any type of situation where you're incentivized by monetary targets over the situation that you're in. It's going to create a scenario where the types of characters that continue with that over time are going to be the types of characters that we're commonly dealing with now at our front door, who come and knock on it. So it completely makes sense, and it's well, I think we all can agree it's pretty disgusting. It's a disgusting practice. Yeah,
I'll say that was kind of what set the ball rolling for me. I was thinking, okay, I'm getting told off for something what I consider to be the
right thing.
The right thing to do.
Yeah.
And it carried on from there, and there were various other cases before that and after that, but that one really stuck in my mind. I don't know why exactly, but it did. Yeah, I know I made the right decision personally.
Yeah, and that's all that matters, really.
Yeah.
So okay, so it's not a great thing, guys, and we all know this. We're all dealing with these different things in our own way, anyway. So what we wanted to do then is help people that are in these situations that maybe don't have any real knowledge of the law or what should and shouldn't be done and everything else, and just give some real quick tips, really simple tips that you can do right now to protect the vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay. And really give these enforcement agents a difficult time in getting it, because ultimately, doing what we're going to suggest now, they can't get it. So Stuart, let's talk about some of the things that we can do really, really simply that stop it.
Okay. If any of the listeners have a motorbike that is on a finance agreement, I can tell you now, the motorbike jobs that I got, I had a 0% success rate of finding because they are the most easiest thing to hide into a garage, into a shed. If you got a lockable gate behind your house, into the back garden, you'll never find it. And I'd say 0% success rate on finding motorbikes. I could never get them at all. So if you got a motorbike, you kind of want a winner anyway, because they are that easy to find. When it comes to cars as such, the ones I had most difficulty getting hold of were the ones that were on private driveways or in your own garage, or ones that obviously people had a little bit of nous and they knew what was coming, would hide the car somewhere else. Whether it's on a neighbour's driveway, whether it's on a street a couple of roads away. My recommendation is if you don't have any parking facilities and it is literally just a public road on the outside, that is where they can get you. They'll clamp your car and you pretty much lost all advantage that you had in the first place.
So just to clarify then, if I've, my car's, they're looking to be repossessed a car, right? And I've got it on a private drive.
Yeah.
And it's literally there in front of you. You can't clamp it if it's on a private drive. You cannot do anything to take that vehicle if it's on a private drive.
But there is a tactic where we are told that we can block driveways if it isn't like sort of impeding traffic or anything like that. So you can block the driveway because it's still a public road. But at the same time, I kind of didn't like doing that because then you always run the risk of damaging the company's vehicle in case somebody decides, you know what,
bang,
straight into it. Yeah. And that has happened. Not to me, but I do know that has happened quite a few times.
Yeah.
So we were advised only to use that as a last ditch.
Okay. So any enforcement agent that is trying to repossess a vehicle that clamps the vehicle on a private drive, cannot do that. That's we know, but that's nothing they can do. That's not even within their own rules and procedures, etc.
Not from what I can remember.
Because it's on a private property at the end of the day.
If it's on a private property and it's clamped on a private property, the only justification that they will give is the court warrant. But obviously we know about court warrants and stuff like that now, so even that is sketchy to say the least.
And even with a warrant, so forget the legality of the warrant. If you rocked up to a property and I had my vehicle in a garage with the door down, you still can't execute that warrant and get in the garage and take it anyway.
Nope.
So what was the idea of the warrant then? What power did that allegedly give you in repossessing the vehicle? If I've even got it on the drive in front of you,
the only power it would give you is literally it give you the reason to clamp it on the driveway instead of just on the public road. That is it. And
that's it, basically.
And that is, for now I look back at it, it was just another scare tactic.
Yeah, exactly.
That was it.
Yeah.
I can't remember using it for any other reason than to just clamp a car on the driveway. That's...
And I would assume, which is what happens a lot of the time now with these warrants, it's the ignorance of what it is that's being served that kind of compels them to go, okay, get the keys, go take the car, because they think, that's them done. But the point is, guys, if you're watching this now, there's a lot you can do to prevent it happening, even with a warrant. So if you've got a garage and you've got a door on it, there you go, protected, no problems. If you're able to put it behind some gates or whatever, there you go, protected, no problems. You've mentioned maybe a neighbour's drive. If you've got friendly neighbours, you can do that. On that point, actually, would you still be, allowed to block the neighbour's drive if the car was on that property?
Personally, I wouldn't. I would know of certain agents that maybe would have done that, but because it goes into like a grey area of it's the neighbour's property. So if we're blocking a neighbour's property that's got nothing to do with it but the vehicles on it, it goes incredibly grey, and it's like, do we or don't we, sort of thing. I only ever had that a couple of times, and I think each time I just left it there and then tried to deal with it another way, so to speak. The best sort of tactic I can suggest, especially for people that don't have driveways and stuff like that, is if you're going to park it somewhere, don't park it on sort of the next street over or the next 2 streets over. I know it could be a bit of an inconvenience if you got young kids or whatever, you got to take them out of the car, or you got shopping or whatever. Try and park it like a 5-minute or a 10-minute walk away.
Okay.
Instead, because we were trained to circle the areas.
Okay.
And I remember specifically one job in London when we just took on a new client, and I went to see the customer about his car, and he's like, "Oh no, I haven't got it anymore." And this was in central London, and then about a week or so later, I found it in West London, literally just by pure chance driving past it. Okay. And the only reason I recognise it is because he had one of those embossed private number plates.
Right.
And he didn't even live there. it was just left there on the side of the road, and it hadn't moved for a while either. So it's one of those that, yeah, okay, I got lucky on that one. But if they want to play a game with you, play the game back a little bit, and yeah, okay, you may have to walk 5-10 minutes to your house. If you want to keep hold of your car, then that's my advice.
That's the way you've got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you remember any scenario where an individual was trying to prevent you repossessing where you still succeeded, other than like someone making a silly mistake like that where you've just found it randomly? Like, if they're intentionally saying, right, I'm going to put it in the garage or whatever, like, how does that play out? And at what point do you guys give up as well? Like, how often do you keep coming back for it?
I had jobs where I had to sit on all day. And it cost me a lot of money because if I'm sitting on one job all day, I can't go to the other jobs.
Yeah.
And it was this one guy, he had his car on his driveway, but the banking client who wanted the vehicle back said we could take it off the driveway, and he was refusing, and it got really, really messy. I think we were there like 8-9 hours until we eventually got the vehicle back. But there are jobs there where like sort of customers will really, really dig their heels in. And now we're back at it, I say fair play to them. If that's what they want to do, then do it. But I have also had guys chasing me.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was within the first couple of months of working in North London. I had one guy chasing me for a cash guy. So only because, I do remember this, he got told by his missus that they weren't behind on their payments, and he put a brand new engine in because the engine had just blown.
Right. I
turn up a week later to take the vehicle. He wasn't too happy about that. And he came at me with a hacksaw.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that was fun. That was a bit of an eye-opener, to say the least. But that's when, obviously, the police get involved because it comes down to, like, sort of whole breach of the peace and all that side of things. But, yeah, there's a lot of instances like that. But there's also a lot of ones where some of them actually find it as a relief as well. It's like a weight off the shoulders.
Yeah, I can imagine. But I guess if you're one of those individuals where, like, this car is the central pin of your life, you need it to do whatever you've got to do. Yeah. It's a different situation. So if we had one of those scenarios, because there's going to be a lot of folks out there right now that are in them situations,
yeah,
and they're following the advice here, and they're putting it in a garage or whatever they've got to do. Is there a point where, if that was allocated to you in your area, where you would just give up on going because you just think, you know what, it's just more hassle than it's worth? Like,
yeah,
where's the line for you guys in that situation?
It depends how. I'm trying to remember back now. It depends on how many visits that specific job had. We'd always require, if I can remember rightly, it would always be at least 3 visits on that address. It would require at least 1 in the morning, early morning, 1 in the afternoon, and 1 in the evening to try and catch them in that, like, sort of time spread. And again, I had plenty of them where I just never ever knew where the customer was or where the actual vehicle was as well. So there are definitely a lot of times like that, and yeah, it's not easy to track them down.
So in that regard as well, then, so one of the other things that we suggest to a lot of folks when they're just starting out on this journey is just don't answer the door.
Yeah.
So if you've got a situation like that and you're saying there's potentially just the 3-strike rule, as it were, if they don't answer the door at any time, from your point of view as an agent there, you're probably not going to come back anymore because you're wasting your time.
No, we'd leave letters to say that we visited, whether we get a phone call back or not, but that's down to them. But again, it comes down to the one thing that we were always drummed into us was the data protection side of things. And it was always about doing, like, sort of making sure you got your name, date of birth, address, all that before you actually spoke to somebody. And that's what catches a lot of agents out, not just in the company I work for, but other agents who I knew for different companies. Is if you don't give them your details, then what can they do? They can't discuss the account with you because they've not configured it. And if they start speaking about that account, it's one of those things that I always dreaded. like sort of saying too much because I didn't want to get in trouble or give too many details away. Some agents will try and be clever with it, but if you don't give them your personal details, they can't really go any further at the doorstep. So even if you do open your door and they go say, "Oh, can I speak to such and such?" "I'm not here." And they'll go, "Are you such and such?" "No." Well, and then the customer will go, "Well, what's in reference to?" And then the agent should say, "Well, I can't really speak about it until I've confirmed
who you are."
And if that's the case, door slam shut. And that happened multiple times.
Yeah. And that's really, that's actually advice we give to everyone that we're working with on that situation is just never give your name. If you can, just don't even answer the door and engage them. And they're really, I'm hoping you guys are seeing now that there's the fear tactics and the intimidation behind this stuff. But when you break it all down to brass tacks, there's no disrespect, because I know you're out of the profession now, but there's very little power the enforcement agents really have to do what they're there to do. And so if you're smart about it, hide the vehicle wherever you want to hide it, and just don't engage, never give your name. And that's it. There's nothing they can do. There you go. And they get the car. You keep the car basically, or whatever it is you're trying to hide.
Exactly. And it's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So that data protection side of things I think is one of the main keys in like sort of any customer's arsenal.
Yeah.
If they can't get past that and they start speaking, and if you're recording it and they start speaking about the account and start going into like sort of whole financial details and stuff like that, you got them.
Yeah. They're breaching it, aren't they? They're breaching data protection.
So it's one of those that I was always incredibly careful of, and which isn't easy either, because you try not to say too much, and then if you do say too much, you're in trouble. So
yeah,
I'd say just don't speak at all.
Don't speak at all. So really, the moral of the story is, like you say, don't speak at all, hide the vehicle. The only way that an enforcement agent is going to get the vehicle is really by acquiescence, isn't it? If they acquiesce and allow it, then of course they're going to take it. And I'm guessing from your own career, that's pretty much every vehicle you actually got was because they acquiesced.
Yeah.
There you go, guys.
I'd say 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And that was getting probably more and more common towards the end of my time doing it as well. Right. Because we were coming into that point, like sort of 2018, 2019, where there was, again, I think it was a little mini financial dip and a lot of people just wanted to get rid of their vehicles. There was a lot of more companies going under than personal vehicles. The amount of company vehicles I had to deal with, and probably in my last year, outnumbered what I was dealing with personal cases.
Right.
And things like big Arctic lorries and haulage companies and all that sort of stuff. They were pretty much for the final year my bread and butter. There was just more companies going under more than anything else.
Wow.
And 9 times out of 10, it'd be, right, give them a ring, sort it out for a day, and then we just take them away. And we ended up just being like another car collection company. And they take them off to the auction houses. So
yeah, okay, that makes sense. So, wow, there you go, guys. I think that hopefully this has kind of dispelled a lot of the fear that you might be feeling about this situation, and just understand that they have no power. That's it. Stand on your rights, know who you are, and don't give them an inch. No disrespect, Stuart, because I know you're out of that game now. So there you go. And Stuart's actually just a good example. There are some good folks in that, and probably even still today, where they know what's going on, and they're there to try and help. So we're not broad brushing everybody with the same tag. There are some good folks there, but any final thing you want to say, Stuart, to the folks watching with regards to if they're in that situation right now?
I would say just stay strong. Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah,
is the main thing.
Yeah.
And I say, if you want to buy yourself a little bit more time whilst you look into things that you want to do and deal with things on your own terms, definitely just don't give them any ammunition at all. That's the best way you can deal with it.
Yeah, brilliant. Mate, thank you. Really appreciate your time. And folks watching, hopefully that's been of help. There's some top tips in there. Leave any comments, any questions in the comment section below the video. and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.
All right.
Cheers, Stu.
Bye.
Stay there, mate.